Footy Interchange Exchange. This is the People's Podcast, Will Schofield, where we answer all of the questions from our listeners that they send through. Our patrons that send the questions through we'll give preference to, of course, but you can hit us up in the YouTube comments and also on social media each and every Tuesday. Get them in nice and early and we'll make sure we read them out, Scully. But this is where people can get involved and ask a question of your good self, my good self, or just make a comment in the world of footy and we can broadcast it out there for you.
If you're watching along and you do want your questions answered and you're not a patron, we'd love you to be one. BackChatPodcast.com.au and just click on contribute. You can sign up for $10 a month. It helps us make this podcast as well as everything else we do here. But you get first access to questions to be answered here on the pod. You get discounts on all of our sponsors. You get drops such as last week we put Socceroos tickets into the patrons. We just chucked it in there and someone got them. Don't know who, but someone did. We do. You float around with tickets if you buy them all from Bustleton. We put them in there. We try to give giveaways and look after you as VIPs. So if you want to do that, jump on to backchatpodcast.com.au/contribute.
And it gives us a big hand in helping all this stuff continue to roll along. And most importantly, we just love you being part of it as well. The People's Podcast, as I said, and we give preference to the people that contribute on Patreon. So kick us off, Scully, with those questions that came through first.
Brendan asks us, are the Bunbury games a good trial run for a WA round? Also, what is Paps's beard maintenance routine? So you can answer both of those.
Double barrel question, Southwest and beards. Yes. My two favourite topics. A WA round, as in like a mini gather round type thing?
I'd say so.
You could definitely hold a gather round in WA. Well and truly. There's enough venues.
No, you couldn't though.
Optus Stadium.
Well, you can't have Bunbury involved. Like the reason it works,
Joondalup,
everything's there.
Bunbury. So they played in Barossa.
Unless you can play 9 games at Optus, I don't think it works.
But they don't play 9 games at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, I know. But Perth, too spread out. You just need them all in one hub if you're going to do it here.
I know. I haven't been to gather round, so I can't talk that way. But if you play games at Leadville, the Wacker, you could get up and going.
You haven't been to gather round, but you've heard my voice for the last 8 weeks. That is because of gather round.
Yeah, it still continues to go through. Beard maintenance, nothing too much. Just a little trim up every now and again. And
are you trimming it yourself?
Going. Yeah.
You don't go to a barber?
No.
No oil?
Can't afford that.
It's looking very neat.
No oil.
What are you using?
Is it just a little beard trimmer,
like a
razor,
like a number, or you're free?
You start on the shorter number, and you go longer on the way down. Just a little bit of trim up either side.
Right, this is good. These people want to know, mate. It's good. Don't act all shy.
All the big questions.
Are you freehanding it, or are you just on the number, or
just taper it in, just overlap it a little bit.
It's very good.
Taper it in, just sharpen it up.
Zen perhaps hates talking about himself, by the way. So
before this year, I hated being on camera.
Please keep sending in the questions directly to Adam Papalia. Zen asks, Cam Zurhaar was given the keys to the city of Bunbury by the mayor. Was he the most deserving? Which player would you have given the keys to? Look, I thought Cam Zurhaar was good late, but I wouldn't have said he was best on ground. Harry Sheasel ended up playing very well after being kept on the bench for the first quarter and a half. He was on the bench for like 18 minutes or something. They butchered that with Sheasel, but he came back and made a big impact. I probably would choose between Tristan Cherry in terms of his impact on the game and Luke Parker. Luke Parker changed the game. He played forward for the first half, I think had 5 touches. Then he had 17 in the second half. He had 6 clearances, goal assists. He could have kicked a goal himself. For an old boy, I'll give it to Luke Parker, the keys to the city. I just don't know what that gets him.
No, I don't actually.
Dom Sheik can walk goats and wee in public.
Because he got the keys to the city of Kalgoorlie after winning the fight. I guess it was just for Zurhaar kicking goals late and helping them get over the line, and a West Australian as well. So maybe that
good point
tipped it over the edge in terms of that.
Bit of trade fodder there, or is he signed away? He's locked away.
I'm pretty sure, he locked away at the end of last year.
Doesn't really matter. Anyone can anyone by the sounds of things. This is from Dino on Patreon. Where are the Dogs really at? 4th in betting for the flag. Bevo extended, but have lost 6 of 7 of the top 8, but outside of the top. Not quite sure.
6 or 7 against the teams that are up the table.
Are they a mid-road team that could lose Bont and Pally at the end of this year? I
don't see Bont leaving the Bulldogs, do you?
Isn't he going to captain West Coast next year? Isn't that the rumour that was floating around? Well, he hasn't signed.
Not yet. I don't know. He just seems so much a part of that team. It's one of those players you just don't see him moving around.
So are the Bulldogs any good then?
I think at the moment they're still a middle-of-the-road team. Sam Darcy coming back could change their fortunes because he gives them that big target. Aaron Norton hasn't been at his best this year. So I think Darcy coming back could help them make that leap up in the second half of the season. They're right on the cusp right now, but yeah, until you start to prove that you can beat those better teams, you're only going to be a middle-of-the-road side.
Yep, I agree. Bailey on Patreon, the final one over here. Are you happy with how the holding the ball rule is being umpired? Seems like players who try to break tackles and take the game on are being punished, whereas players who concede when tackled without prior and hold the ball or have it held to their chest are getting another stoppage.
I think if you try to, the good rule is if you try to fend off a player and then get tackled, that's your prior, because instead of fending, you could have tried to handball the footy. The one that I'm finding really tough at the moment is a player receives the footy, and if they've got the ball in one arm and they're tackled and pinned the other arm, they're still expected to get that out as they're being taken to the ground. You literally have no option there except just dropping the footy, really, in some of those instances. So I find that one a little bit difficult because even though they've got an arm free, you can't just throw it, you can't just drop it.
And I'm pretty good with rules. I like letting you talk about it though because you do know them better than me. But I get confused then with, like, I hear all the time that we want to see you make an attempt. So does that mean in that circumstance with one arm pinned and the ball out, and if you try to kick it but you don't, is that not dropping the ball?
Correct, to be play on if you had no prior, yep.
So no prior, you get tackled, one arm pinned, you just throw the ball up, right, and you miss your foot.
Yep.
You're telling me that's play on.
Correct.
That's dumb.
I agree.
Yeah, need to be able to dispose of the ball.
I agree.
Now, it doesn't fix the other way, but you can't have it, because that's my understanding too, but that makes no sense.
No, I agree. But that's the rule.
You tried, please.
Because they want the player to try to continue, and they think
made an attempt, shut up.
Even by having the made an attempt call, it keeps the game moving because the ball will spill out, so they don't penalise them.
Okay, so to answer your question, Bailey, not happy with it.
No.
Not going well.
No. As we move to the other comments as well, these ones on X, and it's about the holding the ball rule too. Brad says, and we were asking the question last week on the pod about what's the one thing you could change in the game.
Yep.
Brad says simplifying holding the ball and would like it to be like a team holding the ball. So any handball received from a teammate, it's holding the ball if tackled, because it eliminates if you're standing in a pack and I'm about to get tackled, so I'll just give it to you and then you get tackled.
So the prior is with the person holding the footy first, something like that? Like the ones where they give the handball, they've had 5 seconds with the footy, they give it, someone gets tackled immediately and it's a stoppage.
So it's going to get harder to adjudicate?
I don't know. I just don't know. I don't really, as much as I love umpires, I don't really care if it's harder to adjudicate. I don't think that makes the game better.
Yeah,
I don't think that makes the game better paying that a free kick.
No, I just think the simplifying of it. So back to what we were talking about before. Like if you get tackled in that instance and don't have prior, then if you don't have prior, you don't have to get rid of it.
Yes.
If you do have prior, you got to get rid of it.
Yes.
So pay holding the ball in that instance. If you drop the footy and you don't make a genuine handball or a kick, then it's a free kick against you. I just think that would simplify things for viewers, for people that enjoy the game.
I think I've heard smarter men than you and I talk about this, and I won't say who it is in case it's not what they said, but I'm pretty sure I've heard a very experienced player and now coach say, pay everything on the ball, and it'll break the game right open.
So no prior at all?
Pretty much.
Don't worry about prior?
Yeah.
That'd be a fundamental shift in the game.
Be interesting to watch.
More free kicks.
Be a few free kicks. It was a game of the week and they had like 140 stoppages, so that's not ideal either.
No.
Most stoppages ever.
Every tackle.
That was the Gold Coast Geelong game with the most stoppages ever in the history of the game.
Would players then take possession or not? They just
I think that's the point. That's the point.
Just keep it.
Be free flowing. It'd be a shit show.
Yeah.
It'd be Richmond tapping on, knocking on.
Chaos footy.
Yes.
Other rules people would change. Simo AU, I don't think this is Adam Simpson, but he says 666 rule is garbage. Just allows good teams to flog poor sides. Has had the opposite of the intended effect. Was supposed to make games more watchable by stopping flooding. All it's done is create more blowouts. Enough with the rule changes. Strip it all back. Make it Australian rules footy again, not AFL footy.
I don't think centre bounce goals have gone up that much, to be honest, Simo. This is probably Adam Simpson because he's got no job anymore. No, I don't think it's really affected. All that affects is centre bounce, just so you know. the centre bounce at 666, you used to be able to start 2 players in your back line and flood. It doesn't stop flooding at all. It just stops flooding at centre bounce. As soon as the centre bounce goes, if there's a secondary stoppage and you want to put 5 players behind the ball, you can do that.
Yeah.
So it really only affects the first 15 seconds of, after a goal.
Which is important late in games.
Yes,
which
but
I
that
think
doesn't,
helps
it
that
doesn't
scenario.
create more floggings. I don't think that's the reason, unfortunately.
First home buyer club says, get rid of the sub rule, just have 5 on the bench.
Agreed. I don't really have too many other comments than I think that would be a good idea. You?
Especially after last week when you see a player stuck there and only get 8 minutes of game time. Yeah, I'm fine with that being changed. Benny says, we were talking about State of Origin last week. He reckons don't do State of Origin, do City v Country as a concept instead of
just one game.
WA v Victoria, just one game. Because the issue we've got is too many teams in State of Origin all wanting to compete, to play too many games. Just do one off in the middle of the year, City v Country.
Like it. No, but just put it before the grand final, not in the middle of the year.
Yep, so just the grand final teams aren't.
Yeah, which is fine.
Part of it. Moving along, Dan Starler says, let's wait for the WA teams to get their shit together before they get a third licence in Western Australia. With the Tassie licence in place for now, let's hope the unrealistic conditions of the licence don't muck that up. A Northern Territory licence is what I would like to see next as part of that. Or maybe one of the struggling Vic teams like North Melbourne could move up there and become the Northern Territory Roos. And I would thin out the Vic clubs and expand the league. I feel this is a better idea than them buying games in WA.
Maybe. I don't think you'd get North Melbourne to – I mean, it would make sense, the Northern Territory, right? The 2 Norths.
Yep.
You got it?
I got it.
Look, I just don't think you're going to move them. They're not going to move for their entire – you might move some games there. Like, you're just not going to get them to move their base there, which is what the AFL would want.
And I think the whole part about having more teams is about creating one whole extra game, which creates more broadcast rights revenue and helps the game overall. So as much as, yes, it is very much heavily weighted in Victoria, I don't think they want any less teams, potentially. They want to create 2 more eventually. We're talking concussion last week. Widescreen TV says, I have to disagree with you on the concussion aspect. I think the amount of information we now have surrounding concussion, it's reasonable that there should be some level of responsibility on the player. However, Scully, you were drafted to the Eagles in 2007. The level of information surrounding concussion was significantly less. In 2005, for example, was the first time the NFL used the term CTE. I'd be in full support with you if we were referring to players who are playing now and then had lawsuits. However, seeing as CTE has only been around for 20 years and really only addressed properly in the last 5 years or so, I think you're a bit off the mark when you're talking about some players going for compensation last week.
Yeah, but you literally can't say I'm off the mark. I'm the person that's involved. You can't tell me what to think. like I'm off the mark. No, I'm the direct person. If I was commenting on players that were playing when I was playing and not about myself, well, fair enough. But I am that person, so I'm not off the mark. You have to have personal responsibility. It can't be everyone's fault. I didn't sign up to AFL thinking I'll never get hurt and nothing would ever be wrong in the future. And that's what these lawsuits are. That's exactly what they are. So no, I don't take that on board whatsoever.
Great to have your feedback, though.
Well, yeah, but that's okay. I don't have to be nice to everyone.
No, I agree. It's good. Good debate. That's what we're here for. Horatio says, never thought...
Horatio Kane? No. Okay. Do you know who Horatio Kane is?
No.
CSI, detective.
Yeah.
Anyway. Red hair.
Wears the glasses?
Yeah, red hair.
Yeah. Horatio says, never thought I'd like an ex-Eagles player as much as I do Scully. I've moved back east, so we're just giving you a clip and then we'll give you a good one.
That's good.
I've moved back east after 30-odd years in WA. Doc is tragic, but loving the content, keeping me in the loop with WA footy. Nice work.
Love it, Horatio. Try my very best to be impartial. In fact, I sometimes get called hating my former side. So do our very best in here. Very lucky to have Adam Papalia alongside me.
I'll bring you back down again. Jared says, true story. In 2008, I was at a waffle match between the Perth Demons and Peel. One of my friends yelled out to Scully, your fly's undone. And Scully literally checked his shorts.
I mean, I don't doubt I was playing in the waffle in 2008.
Jared says it was memorable. Do you remember this, Scully?
What did I say back to you after I checked, Jared? That's what you've left out of the story because I reckon there would have. If I did, and there was no
fly on footy shorts.
Oh,
clearly.
thanks, Paps. Yeah, I understand that. And once I realised that on the field, I'm sure I would have sprayed the absolute living daylights out of Jared and his friends.
If you can remember the game, Jared, we'll go back See if we can get the behind the goals vision. And
I can almost guarantee you that would have happened, as Jared said, but he's left off what happened afterwards because I would have gone ballistic.
all right, Jared, send it through to us. T-Pay says, at what point does Minnie realise that Matt Flynn is simply not competitive as a lead ruck? Your thoughts on Matt Flynn?
I think he's actually been pretty good, to be honest. Yeah, I think that. Oh, sorry to butt in here. I'll come back to Matt Flynn. I will come back. Breaking news.
Yes.
Dan Constance just burst in the door. You're going to like this, Paps, because
Okay.
we'll release this. Cozzy Pickett mulling mega 7-year offer to remain at Melbourne until 2034. I mean, that's not breaking news. That's just nothing. That's Cal Toomey talking shit about contracts. Cozzy Pickett mulling mega 7-year offer to remain at Melbourne until 2034. Okay, I don't think that's that breaking. I heard that on Monday, and it was just like he's considering staying at Melbourne.
Dan's just been shot down.
Sorry. Well, it's just been read.
It's been read.
Yeah, okay.
Well, when we think about the timelines of podcasts, this will be 2 days after that.
Yeah, well, just so you know, and I'm on record, like, who cares? Like, let's throw around different contracts around here. Look, I think Matt Flynn, back in the question,
Okay.
right? I think Matt Flynn, I reckon he's going pretty well. Like he's actually just rucking against really good rucks at the moment. I think keep him in there. I think he's other than Cherry, he's taken the most contested marks of any ruckman in the competition.
They've started to do that a bit more in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think you got to maintain. I think the error they made was dropping him after round one. I'm pretty sure they played him round one and then dropped him. They just play him, commit to him, develop him, and see if he can build into something that's competitive.
You got to think too, he has not played a lot of footy. Like he's older. He's 27, almost 28. But most games he's played in a season before is 12. So it'll be 10 this week. And he's never played like long runs. So I think this might now be the second longest run that he's played of consecutive games in a row. So
Yes.
I still think T-Pay maybe wait till the end of the year. But yeah, certainly Darcy Cameron's a name that's been floated around for West Coast to try to chase as well. Jesse says, question for Will as the rain starts to come down, if you hear any noise in the background, says, question for Will, can you talk through the psychology of what runs through a team when they have multiple misses in a row? What we saw a few times this weekend, like West Coast pretty much all game and Brisbane in the last quarter. How easy is it to drop your head when you do all the work for little reward?
Yeah, I think pretty easy, especially if you're starting to get real dominance and you can't kick that score because you know the other side's going to get the momentum eventually. Like you don't get to hold momentum in games forever if you're anyone. So if you don't take opportunities, it starts in the back line, then the midfield starts getting, and then, that was connection and then execution from forwards and connection from mids for West Coast. Backline held up pretty well, so that'll be Monday review sort of stuff. But it's pretty easy to lose track, yeah, for sure.
John follows up saying, what actually gets done at training after the debacle in front of goal? Is there more time spent on goal kicking that week, or
there would
be by doing that?
There would be, but it's got to be a pattern of behaviour. It's probably not a pattern yet. It's just one game. If every single game and, the thing that you didn't do well the weekend, you then went and worked on, you'd just be in a consistent loop. Like you have to be pretty strategic on what you spend your time on. Like the forwards kick goals at training. And yes, they've got to, screw their guts up a bit and make sure they do that. But like it wouldn't be goal kicking only now. Like we're not doing anything else, just goal kicking.
What were the conditions for you? Because
Perfection. That was perfect conditions.
in the lead up, they were talking about how it's going to blow a gale and you got to kick with the wind in the first quarter. And then afterwards, I think the paper was saying, we told you it was going to be poor conditions and windy, and they didn't handle it right. I was sitting in the crowd, though. There was not a breath of wind.
I saw Duggo say they didn't handle conditions well. The conditions were perfect, so they didn't handle perfect conditions well.
I think I saw Oscar Allen quoted as saying, it was good at ground level, but once you kick the ball high, it started to move around a bit.
I guess we wouldn't know that.
But it didn't seem like that.
No, it was... that wasn't a condition.
Couldn't have got any better, I don't think, in terms of a day.
It was 17th versus 18th.
Yeah. It was just a shocker. I think Glenn Jakovic said on 6PR it was the worst game he'd been part of a broadcast in 20 years. So
about sums it up.
Wasn't a good standard. Ed says, do we want a grand final decider because in the dying minutes a player doesn't hear the ump say stand? It's the worst rule in the game, closely followed by how umpires decide what was deliberate or not.
What do you think?
I don't mind the rule. I think it has had a good impact actually on being able to free the ball up to move a little bit more. The stand part, the 50-metre penalty is a big penalty play. I've actually thought for a little while that having a smaller meterage penalty would be good for some of those minor infringements. So instead of 50, just go with a 20-metre penalty, or 25 if you want to halve it and go that way for someone that's just moved on the mark or someone that's walked in the protected area. Make it a smaller penalty.
I reckon they've officiated that fine this year. There's not really too many. It's more protected area stuff than man on the mark 50s they get given now anyway.
Protected area ones I'd like to see let go a bit more if they're not impacting the player who's actually trying to kick the football. If you get in the road, fair enough. But if you're just running around the back and it has absolutely no impact on what's going on, then let it play. Steve says, is there a fitness issue with the Eagles, or is it because they're still a young side? They've been blown apart in last quarters in successive weeks now.
I think they can actually correlate those two things, being young and unfit. That there is a correlation between young players not understanding exactly what it takes to be, a fit AFL player that's able to run out games, and you learn that. So I don't think they're unfit, but they are young and potentially they have more fitness levels to get to. Like, they could be fitter. They're not unfit, if that makes sense.
Dale says, as a Victorian, I support a third team in WA and South Australia. Haven't thought about the timeline as to when they would come in. WA and SA teams deserve less travel and more games at home. This is on the back of me saying, would love to see a third team in WA.
Which is sort of what we've achieved with North Melbourne games. Like, both West Coast, spoken to players both at Freo and West Coast in the last week, and they're pumped. They've got 4 weeks at home, both of them. One of them 5 weeks, I think, because of the bye, because of West Coast bye maybe. They've got 5 weeks at home because there's a derby in there maybe. So brilliant. How good. That's brilliant.
It was all started off as part of an equalisation measure for the AFL to try to get it a few more games in WA for the WA teams. Chris says, hey, Paps, wouldn't Busselton be a better location, as that is where the airport is? Burjo wants the Southwest Sharks as well to be the next team. Well,
we know where you sit.
You know where I'd say about Busselton. I think from a cost-wise, like Hands Oval, continuing to redevelop that, extend the grandstand right the way around the ground if you're going to turn it into an actual venue, probably going to be the cheaper option. If you had the money to build a standalone venue, then I think you can put it in Busso, and it's sort of in the middle of all of that region. So,
is that the main oval in town, or
how good would it be if it was closer to the beach and you just had the drone shots coming across? You got the jetty in the background.
Probably not ideal when it's windy.
No, you got to put a roof on it as well. Then I think, but that's ideal situation. I think Hands Oval is probably the way to go, though, given the work that they've put into it already.
Maybe we need Basil to be premier. I don't know how any of that works. I'm not political, but I feel like he's a footy guy. And just go, Basil, your job is to get the team in Busselton
Stadium.
I don't know.
Build it and they will come. There's a way to get it done, I hope. Anyway, Scully, thank you very much.
I've closed my laptop, so we're done.
I was getting a hurry up there. This has been the Footy Interchange Exchange, the People's Podcast. Always send us through questions. Join up on Patreon as well. Send it through on socials and we'll get to them. But always great to have your contributions right here to the pod.